Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks for watching this. This is going to be a how-to video. You've probably seen my post either on the surfing subreddit or on YouTube showing this fin that I made, this all-rounder single fin. I'm going to be doing a how-to today on this. I'm going to start with the first part of making this, which is crafting the foam into the shape of a fin. So I'll be doing that really shortly. There's a couple other things that I want to cover beforehand, just in terms of materials and setup and how I do this. And first of all, I'll just kind of explain why I'm doing it. So I'm a surfer in the Northeast US. I surf mainly in Jersey, New Jersey and Maryland and North Carolina. But I live in Pennsylvania, so it's quite a haul for me to get to surf anywhere. So I don't have a ton of options in terms of surf shops being around me. So I just decided, I want to try some, as I got to an intermediate level of surfing, I wanted to try some different types of fins. I wanted to ditch the 2-1 setup that came on some of my boards and try some different shapes, some different feels, and different sizes of fins. And I don't have a good shop around me. I also didn't want to spend $100 on a fin that I ultimately didn't like. So I decided to start trying to create some fins of my own. And I think I have a way of doing this that is easier for like a do-it-yourselfer, a person that doesn't have a shop or a lot of power tools. If you have searched on YouTube at all for how to DIY surfboard fins like I have, a lot of it is most of it is like doing the professional way of layering up fiberglass cloth and using epoxy, and you create kind of like a blank that's an outline of the fin shape you want. And then you have to take like an orbital sander or some kind of heavy sander. Well, first of all, you have to use a jigsaw or a bandsaw to cut the shape out that you want, which most people don't have those. And then once you have the shape cut out, you have to foil the fin into a shape that is the shape of a foil that will work in the water. And that involves using a belt sander or some other type of sander to create that shape. And you kind of have to know what you're doing to make the foil in the right shape. So all of that is a little bit hard for the average person to do. It's hard for me to do. I don't have a shop. I don't have the power tools. So I just tried to find a way of doing this that I could do kind of on a desktop, using minimal tools. I've done it both with my Cricut and without a Cricut. The Cricut helps with cutting the shapes out somewhat, makes it a little bit faster, a little bit cleaner. You don't have to do it that way. I think the way that I'm going to do it today, I'll do kind of both. I'll cut some of the shapes out with the Cricut template and then without. The files that I posted up for people to download on the surfing subreddit, or if you went to Etsy to get them, they have both the digital files for cutting it directly with a knife, or for pre-cutting the template with a Cricut and then cutting the foam with the Cricut blade. And I can show both and explain both of those ways of doing it. So I'll get into materials and I'll get into how I actually do this, and I'll do it here and you all can watch. I have a couple different camera angles so you can see how I'm actually doing it. I started looking at different materials to create fins out of. I've made fins out of, like, this is basswood. This is a pivot fin. This worked really well. I still surf this. The wood is a little bit harder to sand. There's just the foam, which is the one that I showed in the post. That's really easy to sand and to get to the right shape. And it's the time involved in that is much less, but with wood it's a little bit more work to do that. But this worked really well. I'll probably do some videos on how to make fins out of wood. This is a pivot I made out of wood. This is a kind of an all-rounder that I made out of wood. This didn't work all that well because this was an early one that I made, and I left too much of a bead of epoxy on the trailing edge. And so this just doesn't work that well in the water. I think I could sand it down and make this work again, but I'm making so many other fins with different materials that that's just going to be in the future. So I've made a bunch. I made a all-rounder. This is the same template pretty much as the foam one. A lot of these early prototypes failed on me just because I wasn't doing it right. I didn't have the process down right. So I've made a bunch that just didn't work because of the way I just didn't have the right reinforcement with the fiberglass. The fiberglass is really important. With the foam, it's what gives it its strength. If you're doing only epoxy, it's just not going to work. It's going to crack and break on you. So you need like the right amount of fiberglass to keep the thing sturdy. So this is one that I made that I didn't have fiberglass along this bottom edge, and it got in the water and this thing started moving, and it just eventually cracked and let water into the fin, which is what you can't have happen. So created a bunch of ones that failed. And then that kind of brought me to this foam version that I made. There's another version that I'm also going to do a video on and show you guys. This is actually really cool. This is the same shape. This is an all-rounder. I think that's a 10-inch. So the foam one is a 9.5-inch single fin, and this is, I think, a 10. And this is made a little bit differently. It's not made out of foam. It's still made out of fiberglass and epoxy, but it uses felt, and you sort of layer up layers of felt. The felt is thinner, so this won't work with the digital files that I uploaded. Those digital files will only work with a 4mm material like the foam that I'm using. When you start getting to thinner materials like the felt, it won't work. I'll have to provide other digital files for that, but I'm gonna make this as well. And this is a little bit, I felt like the foam version's a little bit easier to get into and make for the first time. This one is a little bit trickier, but it's still relatively simple, and it's really super strong. It feels like a true 100% fiberglass fin, and I've surfed this a bunch and it's holding up really well. It feels like a fiberglass fin. It's like indestructible pretty much. And yeah, I'll do a video on how to make these as well. It's kind of ugly. I'm planning to remake this, and I've changed the design somewhat in some of the files that I'm using, and so I can make this look a lot better and even function better. So that will be coming. And then, like I said, I'm also going to do some videos on, you can use all different kinds of materials. I have mainly I'm using the foam, the felt, and then like balsa wood or basswood. That's pretty easy to sand. I kind of ditched, I tried some with cardboard, and that doesn't really work all that well. In terms of materials, you're going to need just a space to do this on. Any desk or table surface will work. You can do basically all of your work on a surface like that. I have behind me, I've made this fume hood that I use sometimes when I'm spray painting or working with the epoxy. But if you have a well ventilated area, or you can get outside to do some of the spray painting or epoxy, that'll work for you too. It's getting cold in the area where I live, so it's just easier to do some of the stuff down here. And yeah, I'm moving, I've been prototyping and doing a lot of research and development on how to make these, and it's just easier to have a place to turn around and do it right there. So materials, the main materials that go, or really the only materials that go into the fin itself is foam for the core. The bulk of what is in the fin is foam, and then fiberglass. You can get this fiberglass cloth that I got at Home Depot. Basically any hardware store will have, and auto parts stores sell these. I think they're 8 square feet of fiberglass. I think this is like $5 maybe, and maybe $5 to $8. And one of these will make a fin. depending on the fin size you make, you might be able to get more than what you could. Like if you made the 7.5-inch fin, you might be able to get 2 fins out of one of these. And so even the largest fin size, the 10-inch fin, this is more than enough to make that fin if you make the amount of layers that I made. I'm going to use this black styrene foam that comes from Foam Core that you can buy at the store. I bought this at Michael's craft stores, which is in the US, and it's pretty cheap. I want to say it's maybe $10, and you get 4 sheets of foam, and you don't need 2 full sheets for a fin. So if you buy a pack, a $10 pack, you can probably make 2 to 3 fins out of that pack. And then there's another foam. This is also styrene foam. This I got at Dollar Tree, and this stuff's really cheap. I would think it works just as well as the black foam. The reason I get the black foam is, you'll see, I'll show this, but this is just the foam, but it comes with paper on it, which if you've ever like done a project for school, you'll know that, you know, the foam, it's paper with foam in the middle. With this black stuff, you can just peel the paper right off, both sides, and then you get just foam to work with, which is really great. This stuff from Dollar Tree, I'll take like just a spray container like this with some rubbing alcohol in it, and saturate the surface of the foam board, and then the paper peels right off of that. So you have 2 options really, like as far as I see it: the white, which comes off with alcohol, or the black, which comes off, you just peel it right off. There might be other brands of foam other than the Dollar Tree and the Michael's that'll work, but that's what I've tried. There's a couple that I tried that didn't work. It's just no matter what I did, I couldn't get the paper off in like a clean, easy way. So you might have to experiment. You could, if you don't have access to either of these kinds of foam board and you can't find one, you could try making it with leaving the paper on. If the paper is on, it's glued onto the foam so well that you can't get it off, it's possible that the fiberglass and everything will stick to that, and you're not going to have a problem, because that will sort of be on the inside of the fin, and the outside of the fin you'll sand the paper off anyway. I haven't tried that, so I can't say for sure if it will delaminate because of the paper being in there also, but it could be totally fine. But I can use either of these where the paper just comes off. These are cheap styrene foams. They you know, if you flex them enough, they'll break. I don't think the fin will flex enough to actually flex this to where it can break. But there are higher quality foams. This is a Divinycell foam that I got online. It's more expensive. It costs a lot to ship it, which is why I'm not recommending people use it. But if you want, I think it was fiberglassed.com is where I bought this. This is 2mm, so it won't work with the digital files that I just posted. But if you got the Divinycell foam that's as thick as the styrene foam, which is like 4mm, it'll totally work. And this stuff is better. It's easier to score and snap. It's made for fiberglass, so it's like the Cadillac of foams. I really like working with it, but I'm trying to make something that people can just run out to the store, get the stuff they want. You could also like recycle, you know, I've used foam board. I have like a portfolio projects that I did that it's stuff, you know, artwork that's mounted to foam board, and if it's old, you can you know, take the paper off of those and recycle and use old foam board and not buy like foam board at the store. That would work too. So you have a couple options there, you know, like the good stuff. This is Divinycell, or either of the foams that you can just get at basically any store. So that's foam and fiberglass. Then epoxy. The epoxy is kind of complicated, but I think I can explain it. There's mainly 2 types of epoxy. the polyester epoxy, which is used a lot in making surfboard fins and surfboards and boats and all kinds of marine applications, you can't use that. It will dissolve the styrene foams. It will not dissolve the Vinycell. So it's the polyester resin will not dissolve this foam, and it's cheaper than epoxy. So but it probably would be a wash by the time you spend more money on this foam and you're spending less money on the epoxy. It's a wash, or not the epoxy, the polyester resin. If you use this with polyester resin, you're not really saving any money because the foam's more expensive. So I would recommend just doing cheap foam and then use epoxy resin as opposed to polyester resin. Epoxy resins, the good stuff that I've used, the best stuff is this West Systems. Now this is, I got this at there's a outdoor store near me. It's a little bit harder to get. You might have to order it. But there's this one store near me that carries this. This is $50, but it's 32 ounces. So $50 for the resin, and then you'd get a hardener with it too. So you mix them to make the epoxy actually harden up and turn into plastic basically. So this is 30. So 30 and 50, that's about $80. But you could, I don't know how many fins you can make out of this, like maybe 10 or even more. So if you get serious about it, as I am, you probably want to invest in some of this, because this is the good stuff. It's made for marine applications. There are other epoxies, high quality epoxies other than West Systems that I don't know that much about, but check out other YouTube videos. Other people recommend, different resins. But what I'm gonna recommend is just using craft resin at first, so you get comfortable with it, because it's easy to get, and you can buy a smaller quantity of it. It's cheaper, but in the long run, buying in bulk is going to help you. The stuff that I've used JB Weld, which is really easy to get a hold of. That's at hardware stores, auto parts stores. It's the 5-minute cure. 5 minute is really hard. If you're a beginner, it's tough to do anything in 5 minutes. It just sets up so fast, and it's frustrating and doesn't give you much time. The West Systems takes a while, so you can take your time. It's very forgiving. It's easy to work with. The 5-minute epoxies are tough. There are some parts of this process where you can use 5 minute, where time isn't really too much of a problem. But for like the outer coatings, where you're trying to make, a nice surface and get an even application, you should use a slower curing epoxy. So I've been using this Bob Smith Industries stuff that I can get at a craft store. They have 5 minute, 15 minute, and 30 minute. And then there's also another one that I think is geared toward fiberglass or finishing. Comes in like a gray tube that I haven't experimented with yet. But yeah, you can get them in a variety of sizes. This is the 15 minute. Here's the 30 minute is the yellow. That's the slow cure. It's thicker stuff. So the West Systems is thinner. It's a little bit easier to work with. So if you want to get West Systems, go for it. You can try this stuff too. I think this is what I'm going to use today. I'll use the BSI brand, and I'll use I'll probably use some of the 5 minute, because I want to make this video fast and get it out. I'm going to use some quick setting stuff for some parts, maybe the mid for some, and then the slower 30 minute for some parts of it. So I'm going to mix them. But for you, for your first time, I would say go out and get like a 30 minute epoxy, This stuff they say on their website is waterproof, and so is the 15-minute. The 5-minute, it doesn't say that that's waterproof, but if I use that at all, it's going to be on the inside of the fin, so the waterproofing doesn't matter on the inside of the fin. If you get water on the inside of the fin, you're screwed anyway, so it doesn't matter. But on the outside, I'm going to use probably the slower curing. So that's epoxies. There are other epoxies that I've tried. There's like, at craft stores, you can get like casting resin epoxies. Some of those are a little bit, because they're made for casting, which is like pouring into a mold and making like a shape or a 3D object out of it. Those are thinner, so they perform a little bit more like the West systems, but I don't exactly know how those are going to hold up in water. I'm not sure. It could dissolve. I think all epoxy is supposed to be waterproof, but there's some epoxies are a higher quality than others. Like West Systems is the marine grade. People use it on boats. It's like professional stuff. I'm just not sure about the craft epoxies, how they're going to hold up. I would say definitely try it and see where you can get. With that, it should be fine, but I just can't guarantee. And then there are other professional grade epoxies out there, epoxy brands. I don't know that much about them. The West System is what I can get, so that's what I've been using. Alcohol, isopropyl rubbing alcohol, that's for cleanup and for removing resin off of things if you make a mess. Water won't do anything. You can use acetone, but acetone dissolves the foam. So don't get acetone near this stuff because it will turn it into like glue and it could really hurt you. It could burn you. But this stuff's safe. Rubbing alcohol, I get this and squirt it all over things, wipe stuff down, clean my hands with it, everything. Then in terms of safety stuff, I wear just like latex gloves or neoprene gloves. I don't like getting the epoxy on my hands. And also when you get to the sanding part, I made the mistake of sanding fiberglass barehanded, and I got fiberglass like embedded in my hands, and it like drove me nuts. I like touched my face with it, and it was like my face got all screwy. So don't do that. If you're sanding and you know there's fiberglass in the epoxy, wear gloves. If it's just epoxy, you can sand that, or if it's the foam, you can sand that without gloves. But don't mess around when it comes to the fiberglass. And then I also wear this guy. You probably can get away with just like a face mask, like one of the cheaper masks for the sanding. And if you do the epoxy in a really well ventilated area or outside, you probably don't need this, but I do it in here. These are the cartridges that are for like, they're like an upgrade to this mask, and they filter out VOCs. Epoxy isn't supposed to be horrible. The polyester resin is terrible. It smells awful and it's bad for you, and I definitely wear this if I'm working with that. But epoxy is not supposed to be too bad, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I wear this. I do the epoxying under there when I can, so it takes most of the fumes out anyway, or I go outside. The spray painting I do either in there or I go outside. But wear something, especially when you're sanding. When you're sanding, you don't want to get polystyrene or fiberglass or anything like that in your lungs. It's just really, really bad for you. So make sure you're wearing a mask, or outside or whatever, or a combination of the two. So then tools, I have some templates from this one that I already made. I still have the cardboard templates for cutting the foam that I made with the Cricut. And I pop this little guy out of the Cricut. You can get this without having to get a Cricut. I think it's just the default blade. And it's really nice for cutting foam, I've found. Like I pop it out and you can just like, it just does the curves great. Like you don't have to have skills with a X-Acto knife for making curves. It does a really nice job. It sort of rests on the surface of the foam, and then you just glide it, and it makes your cut. And you also don't have to cut the whole way through the foam. If you just, score it, it's score and snap. So you just score and then it snaps apart, which is really nice. But I realize not everyone has these. I think these are maybe $10, but it's worth it if you're going to be making more than one of these. Even if you don't have a Cricut and you're directly cutting, like you're printing out the sheets, the PDF sheets that are in the download, and like putting that on top of the foam and then cutting the foam directly without using a template, I'd still recommend using this if you can, because it just makes cutting curves so much easier. But for the sake of the demonstration, I'll use an X-Acto blade to do the cutting with the paper, which I had somewhere. So just a regular old X-Acto blade is all you really need to cut out the foam, and then some sandpaper. So I get different grits of sandpaper. I use 120 grit. I use 220, so that's getting finer. And then the roughest I use is either a 50 grit or an 80 grit, and that just makes the initial sanding of the foam go faster, because it's a rougher grit, and you can just take off the foam really fast. The only problem with the coarser sandpaper is as you start to make the foam thinner and more to the final shape, you can tear the foam, especially around the trailing edge. That starts to get thin, and if you take the coarse sandpaper over that edge, you can mess it up. So once I get sort of to a rough shape, I'll switch to the 120 that's a little bit more forgiving on the foam, and there's not as much of a risk of beating the foam up. So that's materials, the setup that I have here, the safety stuff. I think let's get started with actually cutting out the foam.